Maya Chen sat in the corner of the music room, her fingers moving silently across an imaginary piano. She always did this when she was nervous. The real piano stood just 10 feet away, but she needed a moment to collect herself before starting. Practice today was different. She would find out if she got the solo for the Spring Arts Festival. The music room smelled like old wood and sheet music. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, casting long shadows across the floor. Maya had spent countless hours in this room over the past 3 years. It felt more like home than her actual bedroom sometimes. "Maya, dear, come here," called Mrs. Rodriguez from behind her desk. The older woman's voice was warm and gentle, like hot chocolate on a winter day. She had been Maya's music teacher since freshman year, and she understood Maya better than most people did. Maya walked over slowly, her heart beating faster with each step. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled and held up a piece of paper. "Congratulations. Sweetheart, the solo is yours." For a moment, Maya couldn't breathe. Then a huge smile spread across her face. "Really? I got it." "You got it," Mrs. Rodriguez confirmed. "You'll be playing Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major for the Spring Arts Festival. The performance is in 6 weeks." Maya felt like she might float away from happiness. The Spring Arts Festival was the biggest event of the year at Lincoln High School. Hundreds of people would be there, parents, students, teachers, and even people from the community who loved music. Getting chosen for a solo was like winning the lottery. "I can't believe it," Maya whispered, still staring at the paper in Mrs. Rodriguez's hands. "I can," her teacher said kindly. "You've worked harder than anyone else in this program. You deserve this opportunity." Maya had always been quiet in school. She wasn't the type to raise her hand in class or join lots of clubs. But when she sat at the piano, something magical happened. All the words she couldn't say, all the feelings she kept inside, they all came pouring out through her fingers. Music was her language, and she spoke it fluently. She remembered the first time she played piano. She was 7 years old, visiting her grandmother's house. There was an old, slightly out-of-tune piano in the living room. While the adults talked in the kitchen, Maya had climbed onto the bench and pressed one key. The sound fascinated her. She pressed another, then another. Before long, she was trying to figure out how to make the keys sound like the songs she heard on the radio. Her parents noticed her interest and signed her up for lessons. Maya took to piano like a bird takes. Too flying, it felt natural, like something she was meant to do. Her first teacher, Mr. Kim, was amazed at how quickly she learned. "This child has a gift," he told her parents after just a few months. But it wasn't just natural talent that made Maya special. She practiced every single day. While other kids were playing video games or watching TV, Maya was at the piano. She didn't see it as work, though. Playing piano made her happy in a way that nothing else did. When she started high school, Maya was nervous about joining the music program. What if she wasn't good enough? What if the other students were better than her? But Mrs. Rodriguez welcomed her with open arms from day one. Mrs. Rodriguez was different from other teachers. She never raised her voice or made students feel bad when they made mistakes. She understood that music wasn't just about hitting the right notes at the right time. It was about feelings, about telling stories without words. "Music is a conversation," Mrs. Rodriguez often told her students. "You're not just playing notes on a page, sharing a piece of your soul with everyone who listens." That's exactly how Maya felt when she played. She wasn't just pressing keys, she was sharing her heart with the world. Over the past 3 years, Maya had grown more confident in her abilities. She started as a shy freshman who barely spoke above a whisper. Now she was a senior, still quiet, but sure of herself when it came to music. She had performed in school concerts and even won a few local competitions. But the Spring Arts Festival solo was different. This was the big leagues. "The piece you'll be playing is perfect for you," Mrs. Rodriguez continued. "Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major is beautiful and emotional. It tells a story of longing and hope. I think you'll connect with it deeply." Maya nodded, already hearing the melody in her head. She knew the piece well. It was one of her favorites to play when she practiced at home. The way it started, soft and dreamy, then built two passionate peaks before settling back into gentle whispers. It felt like her own emotional journey put to music. "When do I start preparing?" Maya asked. "Right now, if you want," Mrs. Rodriguez said with a laugh. "But remember, you have plenty of time. Don't wear yourself out." The key to a great performance isn't just practice, it's finding the emotion in the music and letting it flow through you. Maya spent the rest of that afternoon at the piano, playing through the nocturne over and over. Each time, she discovered something new in the music. A phrase that needed to be softer, a section that called for more passion, a moment where she could let silence speak as loudly as sound. Other students filtered in and out of the music room, preparing for their own parts in the festival. They congratulated Maya when they heard the news about her solo. She could see the respect in their eyes. Getting chosen for a solo meant you were really good, and everyone knew it. As the days passed, Maya fell into a routine. School homework, dinner with her family, then straight to the piano. She practiced at home in the evenings and at school during lunch breaks. Mrs. Rodriguez checked on her progress regularly, offering gentle suggestions and encouragement. "Remember to breathe," she would say when Maya got tense. "Let the music breathe too. Don't rush through the beautiful moments." Maya's parents were incredibly proud. They had always supported her music, driving her to lessons and competitions, buying her sheet music, and listening patiently as she practiced the same passages over and over. Now their daughter was going to perform a solo at the biggest event of the year. "We're so excited to hear you play," her mother said one evening at dinner. "Grandma's coming too? She wouldn't miss it for the world." Maya smiled. Her grandmother was the one who had first introduced her to piano, even if it was by accident. It would mean everything to have her there. As the weeks went by, Maya's confidence grew. The nocturne was becoming a part of her, like a favorite sweater. That fits perfectly. She knew every note, every phrase, every subtle change in tempo and volume. But more than that, she felt the emotion behind the music. When she played, she could see colors in her mind, deep blues and purples for the melancholy sections, bright golds and oranges for the hopeful parts. Mrs. Rodriguez watched her progress with pride. Maya had always been talented, but now she was becoming a true artist. There was a maturity in her playing that came from understanding not just how to play the notes, but why they mattered. "You ready, Mrs. Rodriguez?" told her one afternoon. Just 2 weeks before the festival, "I've never been more confident in a student's preparation." Maya felt ready to... She was nervous, of course, but it was the good kind of nervous, the kind that meant something important was about to happen. She had worked for this moment for 3 years, and now it was almost here. She had no idea that everything was about to change. Maya was in the middle of practicing when she heard the announcement over the school's intercom system. "All music students, please report to the music room immediately for an important meeting." She stopped playing and looked around the room. Other students were already gathering, whispering among themselves. Nobody knew what was going on, but something felt different. The energy in the room was tense, uncertain. "Where's Mrs. Rodriguez?" asked Tyler, one of the trumpet players. "She's supposed to be here by now." Maya felt a knot form in her stomach. Mrs. Rodriguez was never late. She was always in the music room before school started, during lunch and after classes ended. The woman practically lived there. Principal Johnson walked into the room, followed by a man Maya had never seen before. The stranger was tall and broad-shouldered, with gray hair cut very short, and a stern expression that made everyone stop talking immediately. He wore a dark blue shirt and black pants that looked almost like a uniform. "Students, Principal Johnson began. I have some news to share with you. Mrs. Rodriguez has had to take immediate medical leave due to a family emergency. She'll be away for the rest of the semester." Maya's heart sank. Mrs. Rodriguez was more than just a teacher to her. She was a mentor, a friend, someone who truly understood her music. And now, just 2 weeks before the biggest performance of her life, she was gone. However, the principal continued, "We're very fortunate to have found an excellent replacement. This is Mr. Harrison. He comes to us with over 20 years of experience directing military bands and high school music programs." Mr. Harrison stepped forward. His posture was perfectly straight, like a soldier standing at attention. When he spoke, his voice was sharp and commanding. Good morning, students. I want to make one thing clear from the start. I believe in excellence, discipline, and hard work. Music is not a hobby or a fun activity. It's a serious pursuit that demands your complete dedication. Maya exchanged worried glances with some of her classmates. This was nothing like Mrs. Rodriguez's warm, encouraging approach. I've reviewed your upcoming Spring Arts Festival program, Mr. Harrison continued, and I can see there's a lot of work to be done. We have less than 2 weeks to get this performance up to professional standards. He picked up a clipboard from Mrs. Rodriguez's desk and started calling out names. Johnson, you're on clarinet. I want to hear your solo piece. Patterson, violin. Chen, piano solo. Maya's name being called made her jump slightly. She wasn't ready for this. She had been expecting Mrs. Rodriguez to guide her through these final 2 weeks of preparation, not some strict stranger who looked like he'd rather be commanding soldiers than teaching teenagers. Chen, you're first, Mr. Harrison said, pointing at the piano. Let's hear this Chopin piece. Maya walked to the piano. On shaky legs, she had performed this piece dozens of times over the past few weeks. But suddenly, her mind felt blank. She sat down, placed her hands on the keys, and took a deep breath. The first notes came out softer than usual. Maya always started the nocturne gently, building emotion as the piece progressed. It was how Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her to approach. It let the music tell its story naturally. But as she played, she could feel Mr. Harrison's eyes on her, watching every movement. It made her self-conscious in a way she'd never felt before. She tried to focus on the music, on the emotions she'd connected with over weeks of practice, but his presence was distracting. When she finished, the room was quiet. Maya looked up, hopefully, expecting some kind of feedback or encouragement. Instead, Mr. Harrison was writing notes on his clipboard, his expression unreadable. He said finally. Interesting interpretation. That was it. No praise, no suggestions, no real feedback at all. Just interesting interpretation said in a tone that didn't sound very interested. Over the next few days, Mr. Harrison began making changes to the music program. He rearranged the seating in the band, changed the tempo on several pieces, and introduced new warm-up exercises that felt more like military drills than music preparation. Maya tried to adapt. She really did, but everything felt wrong. During her practice sessions, Mr. Harrison would watch her with those critical eyes, occasionally making notes, but rarely offering guidance. When he did speak, it was usually to point out what she was doing wrong rather than what she was doing right. Your dynamics are inconsistent, he said one afternoon. The fort sections need more power. You're playing like you're afraid of the keys. Maya wasn't afraid of the keys. She was afraid of him. Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her that music was about expression, about sharing emotions with the audience. Mr. Harrison seemed to care only about technical perfection and volume. He wanted every note to be played exactly as written, with no room for personal interpretation. Music is not about feelings, he told the class one day. It's about precision, discipline, and following instructions. The composer wrote the music a certain way for a reason. Our job is to execute it perfectly, not to add our own ideas. This philosophy went against everything Maya had learned about music. How could she share her heart with the audience if she wasn't allowed to put her heart into the performance? The other students were struggling too. Tyler's trumpet playing became stiff and mechanical. Lisa, who played flute, started making mistakes she'd never made before. The whole music program felt different, colder, more rigid, less joyful. Maya began to dread her practice sessions. What had once been the highlight of her day became a source of stress and anxiety. She would sit at the piano, trying to play the nocturne the way Mr. Harrison wanted, but it felt like wearing shoes that didn't fit. More volume in the climax, he would say. This is supposed to be passionate, not sleepy. But when Maya tried to play louder, the music lost its subtlety. The gentle beauty that had drawn her to this piece in the first place disappeared under heavy-handed playing at home. She tried to practice the way Mrs. Rodriguez had taught her, but Mr. Harrison's voice kept echoing in her head. She found herself second-guessing every choice, every phrase, every moment of silence. Her parents noticed the change in her playing. Is everything okay, sweetheart? her mother asked one evening. Your music sounds different lately. Maya didn't know how to explain. How could she tell her parents that her new teacher was making her doubt everything she'd learned about music? How could she say that the performance she'd been looking forward to for months now felt like a test she was doomed to fail? I'm just nervous about the festival, she said, which was true, even if it wasn't the whole truth. As the days passed, Maya watched Mr. Harrison observe the other students with the same critical eye he used on her. Nothing seemed to meet his standards. The music that had once filled the room with joy and creativity now felt tense and uncertain. She missed Mrs. Rodriguez desperately. She missed the way her teacher would smile when Maya played a difficult passage well. She missed the gentle corrections and encouraging words. She missed feeling like music was something beautiful and meaningful, not just a series of notes to be executed correctly. One afternoon, as Maya was gathering her sheet music after a particularly difficult practice session, she overheard Mr. Harrison talking to another teacher in the hallway. These kids have been allowed to get away with sloppy playing for too long, he was saying. They think music is all about self-expression and feelings. They need to learn discipline and proper technique. Maya felt her cheeks burn. Was he talking about her? About Mrs. Rodriguez's teaching methods? The piano soloist especially needs work, he continued. Talented, maybe, but lacks the strength and command presence needed for a performance of this importance. Maya's heart stopped. He was definitely talking about her. After all her years of hard work, all her dedication to music, he saw her as lacking strength and command presence. She walked home that day feeling smaller than she had in years. The confidence she'd built up over 3 years of music study was crumbling under Mr. Harrison's harsh assessment. That night, she sat at her family's piano and tried to play the nocturne. But for the first time in months, the music wouldn't come. Her fingers felt clumsy on the keys, and the melody that had once flowed so naturally now sounded forced and awkward. Maya put her head in her hands and wondered if maybe Mr. Harrison was right. Maybe she wasn't strong enough for this kind of performance. Maybe she'd been fooling herself all along. The Spring Arts Festival was now less than a week away, and Maya had never felt less ready for anything in her life. Maya woke up on Monday morning with butterflies in her stomach. Only 3 days left until the Spring Arts Festival. She had been practicing the nocturne every spare moment, trying to find the balance between her natural playing style and what Mr. Harrison seemed to want. At breakfast, her mother noticed her picking at her food. You need to eat something, honey. Can't perform on an empty stomach. I'm just nervous, Maya said, forcing herself to take a bite of toast. Her grandmother had called the night before, excited about coming to hear her play. Her parents had invited relatives and friends. Everyone was looking forward to hearing her solo. The pressure felt overwhelming. When Maya arrived at school, she headed straight to the music room for her usual morning practice session. But when she opened the door, she found Mr. Harrison already there with Derek Williams, a junior who played piano in the jazz band. Derek was technically skilled, Maya had to admit. He could play fast, complicated pieces without breaking a sweat. But his playing always felt cold to her, like he was showing off his finger speed rather than sharing any real emotion. Good morning, Maya, Mr. Harrison said without looking up from the sheet music he was studying with Derek. We'll need the piano for a few more minutes. Why don't you practice your scales while you wait? Maya sat down at one of the smaller keyboards along the wall, but she couldn't concentrate on scales. Something about the scene in front of her felt wrong. Why was Derek here so early? Why were they looking at piano music together? After about 15 minutes, Derek gathered his things and left, giving Maya a strange look on his way out. She couldn't read his expression. Was it guilt? Excitement? Pity, Maya? Come here, Mr. Harrison called. We need to talk. Maya's heart started beating faster. The tone of his voice was serious, formal. She walked over to where he stood beside. The grand piano, the same piano where she'd spent countless hours preparing for this moment. I've been giving a lot of thought to our upcoming performance, he began, not meeting her eyes. The Spring Arts Festival is the most important event of our school year. It represents our music program to the entire community. Maya nodded, not trusting herself to speak. She had a terrible feeling about where this conversation was heading. After careful consideration and evaluation of all our performers, I've made some changes to the program. Paused, finally looking at her directly. I've decided to replace your solo with a different piece, performed by Derek Williams. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She felt the blood drain from her face and her knees go weak. What? She whispered. Derek will be performing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor instead of the Chopin Nocturne. It's a more substantial piece, more fitting for an event of this magnitude. Maya stared at him in disbelief. This couldn't be happening. She had worked for this solo for months. Everyone was expecting to hear her play. Her family, her friends, her teachers, they were all coming specifically to support her. But I've been practicing for weeks, she managed to say, her voice barely audible. Mrs. Rodriguez chose me for this solo. She said I was ready. Mr. Harrison's expression didn't soften. Mrs. Rodriguez made her decision based on her standards. I have different standards. This festival demands excellence, not amateur hour. Amateur hour. The word stung like a slap across the face. Maya had been playing piano for 10 years. She had won competitions, performed in recitals, earned praise from every teacher she'd ever had. How could he call her an amateur? Your playing lacks the maturity and strength required for such an important event, he continued, his voice cold. And matter of fact, the Chopin piece is too subtle, too soft. We need something that will make an impression, something with power and technical brilliance. Maya felt tears welling up in her eyes, but she fought to hold them back. She wouldn't cry in front of him. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of seeing how much his words hurt. This is my final decision, Mr. Harrison said, turning back to his paperwork. Derek has already begun preparing the new piece. Suggest you focus on your ensemble work. Instead, Maya stood there for a moment, unable to move or speak. 3 years of building toward this moment, gone in an instant. All those hours of practice, all the excitement and anticipation, erased by this man who barely knew her. Can I at least ask why? She finally whispered. Mr. Harrison looked up from his papers, and for a moment Maya thought she saw a flicker of something, maybe discomfort, cross his face, but it was gone quickly. Your technique is adequate, but your stage presence is weak. You play like you're afraid of being heard. The festival audience expects to be moved, inspired, impressed. Your playing is. He paused, searching for the right word. Forgettable. Forgettable. Maya felt like he had reached into her chest and crushed her heart with his bare hands. Music was the one thing she had always been good at, the one place where she felt confident and capable. And now, this stranger was telling her she was forgettable. She turned and walked toward her bag, trying to keep her composure. Her hands shook as she gathered her sheet music, the Chopin Nocturne. She had studied and practiced and loved for so many weeks. Maya, Mr. Harrison called as she reached the door. I hope you understand this isn't personal. It's about what's best for the program. Maya didn't trust herself to respond. She just nodded and left the room, clutching her music to her chest like it might somehow protect her from the pain. The hallway was filled with students rushing to their first period classes, but Maya felt completely alone. She ducked into the nearest bathroom and locked herself in a stall, finally letting the tears fall. How was she going to tell her parents? Her grandmother was driving 3 hours just to hear her play. Her friends had been asking about the performance for weeks. Everyone knew she had the solo. Everyone was proud of her. Maya cried until she had no tears left, then splashed cold water on her face and tried to make herself look presentable. She had to get through the school day somehow. Word spread quickly through the music program. Lunchtime, everyone knew about the change. Some students seemed shocked, others confused. A few looked at Maya with sympathy. While others avoided her altogether, Tyler found her sitting alone in the cafeteria, staring at her untouched sandwich. Maya, I heard what happened, he said, sitting down across from her. I can't believe it. Everyone knows you're the best pianist in the school. Apparently not good enough, Maya said quietly. This is crazy. Mrs. Rodriguez would never have done this. Maya nodded but didn't trust herself to speak. Talking about Mrs. Rodriguez made everything hurt worse. That afternoon, Maya went to her locker instead of to music class. She couldn't face sitting in that room, watching Derek practice her solo, pretending like everything was fine. When she got home, her mother was in the kitchen preparing dinner. She looked up with a bright smile when Maya walked in. "How was practice today? Are you feeling ready for Friday?" Maya tried to speak but found she couldn't form the words. "How do you tell your parents that you've been replaced? How do you explain that the teacher thinks you're not good enough, Maya? What's wrong?" her mother asked, seeing her expression. The whole story came pouring out: Mr. Harrison's decision, his harsh words, Derek taking her place. Maya's mother listened with growing anger and disbelief. "This is outrageous," she said when Maya finished. "We're going to call the principal right now." "No, Mom, please," Maya said quickly. "It'll just make things worse." Mr. Harrison made his decision. Fighting it will just cause more drama. Her mother looked like she wanted to argue, but she could see how defeated Maya looked. "Honey, you are not an amateur. You are not forgettable. You're a beautiful, talented musician, and anyone who can't see that is blind." Maya wanted to believe her mother's words, but Mr. Harrison's criticism echoed louder in her head. Maybe he was right. Maybe she had been fooling herself all along that night. Maya sat at her piano at home and tried to play the nocturne one more time, but her heart wasn't in it anymore. The music that had once felt like an extension of her soul now felt empty and pointless. She closed the piano lid and went to her room, where she called her grandmother to deliver the devastating news. Her grandmother's disappointment was almost harder to bear than her own. "But sweetheart, I was so looking forward to hearing you play," her grandmother said, her voice sad and confused. "I know, Grandma. I'm sorry." Maya hung up the phone and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. In 3 days, Derek would perform on the stage where she was supposed to be. Everyone would watch him play the solo that should have been hers. She felt like a ghost of herself, invisible and forgotten. Maybe that's all she had ever been. And Mrs. Rodriguez had just been too kind to tell her the truth. Maya closed her eyes and tried not to think about the Spring Arts Festival at all. And it was better to pretend it wasn't happening than to imagine. Sitting in the audience, watching someone else live her dream. The night of the Spring Arts Festival arrived with a mixture of excitement and dread that Maya had never felt before. She sat in her bedroom, staring at the dress her mother had bought specifically for her performance. It was a beautiful deep blue color that her mom said matched her eyes. No. It hung in her closet like a reminder of what should have been. "Maya, we need to leave in 10 minutes, her father called from downstairs. Even though she wasn't performing, her family still wanted to attend the festival to support the music program. Maya appreciated their loyalty. But the thought of sitting in the audience and watching Derek play her solo felt like torture. She put on a simple black dress instead and met her family at the front door. Her grandmother had arrived that afternoon, still disappointed but trying to hide it for Maya's sake. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," her grandmother said, giving her a gentle hug. "I'm proud of you no matter what." The drive to school was quiet. Maya stared out the window, watching familiar streets pass by. This should have been the most exciting car ride of her life. Instead, it felt like she was going to her own funeral. Lincoln High School's auditorium was buzzing with activity when they arrived. Parents were finding their seats. Students were running around in performance clothes. The air was filled with the sounds of instruments warming up backstage. Maya had performed in this auditorium before, but tonight it felt different. Tonight she was just another face in the crowd. Maya's family found seats in the middle section, about halfway back from the stage. She recognized many faces around them: parents of her fellow music students, teachers from the school, community members who always came to support the arts program. Several people waved at her or said hello, and she could see the questions in their eyes. They all knew she was supposed to be performing tonight. "Maya," called Mrs. Patterson, whose daughter played violin in the orchestra. "I'm so excited to hear you play tonight. Lisa's been telling me how beautiful your solo sounds." Maya's cheeks burned. "Actually, I'm not performing tonight. There was a change in the program." Mrs. Patterson looked confused. "Oh, I'm sorry. I must have misunderstood." These conversations happened several more times as people filed into the auditorium. Each time, Maya had to explain that she wasn't performing. Each time it felt like a small knife twisting in her chest. The lights dimmed and Principal Johnson walked onto the stage. "Welcome to Lincoln High School's annual Spring Arts Festival," he announced, to enthusiastic applause. "Tonight you'll hear from our talented musicians, who've been working hard all semester to bring you this special performance." Maya tried to focus on the other performances, but her mind kept wandering. The jazz band played a lively swing number that had everyone tapping their feet. The choir sang a beautiful harmony that filled the auditorium with rich, layered voices. Tyler played his trumpet solo with more confidence than Maya had seen from him in weeks. Everything sounded good. The music program was clearly talented and well prepared. But something felt different from previous years. The performances were technically correct, but they seemed to lack the warmth and emotion that it always made. Lincoln's music program special. Maya noticed she wasn't the only one feeling this way. Several people around her were shifting in their seats, clapping politely, but without the enthusiasm she remembered from past festivals. The music was good, but it wasn't touching people's hearts the way it used to. Finally, Principal Johnson returned to the stage. "And now, for our piano solo, we have Derek Williams performing Rachmaninoff's Prelude in C-sharp minor." His stomach clenched as Derek walked onto the stage. He looked confident and composed, sitting down at the piano with perfect posture. The auditorium fell silent as he placed his hands on the keys. Derek's performance was everything Mr. Harrison had wanted. It was technically flawless, with powerful dynamics and precise timing. Every note was exactly where it should be, every rhythm perfectly executed, played with the kind of strength and command that Mr. Harrison had said Maya's playing lacked. But as Maya listened, she felt a strange emptiness. Yes, Derek was playing all the right notes, as he was demonstrating impressive technical skill, but where was the emotion? Where was the story? The music felt like a display of finger exercises rather than a sharing of human feeling. The audience applauded when Derek finished. But Maya noticed it was the same polite applause they'd given to most of the other performances. People seemed impressed but not moved. She watched Derek take his bow and return to his seat, and she found herself feeling sorry for him. He had played exactly what Mr. Harrison asked for, but somehow it felt like everyone had missed out on something important. As the applause died down, Maya noticed a commotion in the back of the auditorium. Someone was walking down the aisle, moving slowly but purposefully toward the front. Maya squinted in the dim light and gasped. It was Mrs. Rodriguez. Maya's beloved teacher looked thinner than before. She was walking with a cane, but she was there. She was actually there. Maya felt tears sprang to her eyes just seeing her. Mrs. Rodriguez made her way to the front of the auditorium. Maya noticed that other people were recognizing her too. Students who had been in her classes over the years, parents who knew her from previous festivals, teachers who had worked with her, they all began to whisper and smile as she passed. Principal Johnson had moved to the microphone to introduce the next piece, but Mrs. Rodriguez approached the stage. The two of them had a brief, quiet conversation that Maya couldn't hear. Then Mrs. Rodriguez slowly climbed the steps to the stage. The auditorium fell completely silent. Even the students backstage seemed to sense that something important was happening. Mrs. Rodriguez took the microphone with shaking hands. When she spoke, her voice was weaker than Maya remembered, but it still carried the same warmth and kindness that had made her such a beloved teacher. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but somehow reaching every corner of the auditorium. "Many of you know that I've been away from school for the past few weeks. I didn't plan to be here tonight, but I couldn't stay away." She paused, looking out at the audience with tears in her eyes. "This music program has been my life for 15 years. I've watched so many talented young people grow and develop their gifts. Tonight I realized that something very important is missing from our program." Maya's heart was pounding. What was Mrs. Rodriguez doing? Where was this going? "A few weeks ago, before I had to leave, I selected a student to perform a piano solo for tonight's festival. This student has worked incredibly hard, not just over the past few weeks, but over the past 3 years. She represents everything that music should be, not just technical skill, but heart, soul, and genuine emotion." Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. Was Mrs. Rodriguez talking about her? I understand that changes were made to the program in my absence, Mrs. Rodriguez continued, her voice growing stronger. But I believe that music is not just about playing the right notes. It's about touching people's hearts, about sharing our humanity with each other. She turned to look directly at Maya in the audience. Maya Chen, would you come up here, please? The auditorium erupted in confused murmurs. Maya sat frozen in her seat, unsure of what was happening. Her parents were looking at her with surprise and encouragement. Her grandmother was nodding vigorously, tears streaming down her face. Go on, sweetheart, her mother whispered. Go up there. Maya stood up on shaky legs. The entire auditorium was watching her now, hundreds of faces turned in her direction. She felt like she was in a dream, moving through thick air toward the stage where Mrs. Rodriguez waited with the microphone. As she walked down the aisle, I heard people whispering, That's Maya Chen. She's the one who was supposed to play. Originally, I remember her from last year's concert. She's really talented. Maya climbed the steps to the stage, her heart beating so hard she was sure everyone could hear it. Mrs. Rodriguez smiled at her with such love and pride that Maya almost started crying right there. This young woman, Mrs. Rodriguez said to the audience, has been preparing to perform Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major. It's a piece that requires not just technical skill, but emotional maturity and artistic sensitivity.
Maya has all of these qualities.
She handed the microphone back to Principal Johnson and turned to Maya. I know this is unexpected, and I know you haven't had a chance to warm up. But would you be willing to share your music with us tonight? Maya looked out at the audience. She could see her family beaming with pride and encouragement. She could see her classmates watching with curiosity and support. She could see community members who had known her for years, waiting to hear what she had to offer. But she could also see Mr. Harrison standing in the wings, his face red with anger and embarrassment. She could see Derek looking confused and hurt. She could see the uncertainty in some people's faces. Wondering why the program was being changed again, Maya had a choice to make. She could politely decline, return to her seat, and let the festival continue as planned. Or she could sit down at that piano and play the music that had been living in her heart for months. She looked back at Mrs. Rodriguez, who was watching her with patient, loving eyes. In that moment, Maya remembered why she had fallen in love with music in the first place. Maya's fingers touched the piano keys, and for a moment, the entire world seemed to hold its breath. She could feel the weight of the silence in the auditorium. Hundreds of people waiting to hear what she would do with this unexpected chance. The first note of Chopin's Nocturne rang out soft and clear, like a single drop of water falling into a still pond. Maya had played this piece so many times over the past few months that her fingers knew every curve of the melody, every subtle shift in harmony. But tonight felt different. Tonight she wasn't playing for a grade or to meet someone else's expectations. She was playing because the music needed to be heard as the gentle, opening melody unfolded. Maya felt all the tension leave her body. The fear, the disappointment, the hurt feelings from the past few weeks, it all melted away as the music took over. This was who she was. This was what she was meant to do. The nocturne began quietly, almost like a whispered secret. Maya's touch was light but sure, each note clear and purposeful. She wasn't trying to impress anyone with loud, flashy playing. Instead, she was telling a story, painting pictures with sound in the audience. People began to lean forward in their seats. There was something special happening on that stage, something that went beyond technical skill or perfect timing. Maya was sharing her heart, and everyone in the room could feel it. Her grandmother sat, with tears streaming down her face, remembering the little girl who had first discovered piano on an old, out-of-tune instrument. Her parents held hands, overwhelmed with pride for their daughter's courage and talent. Around them, parents and community members who had known Maya for years watched with growing amazement. The music began to build, moving from the gentle opening into more passionate territory. Maya's whole body swayed slightly as she played, not in a showy way, but like someone completely lost in the emotion of the moment. Her dynamics were perfect, soft passages that drew people in, louder sections that made hearts race. and moments of silence that spoke as clearly as any note. Mrs. Rodriguez stood in the wings, tears of joy running down her cheeks. This was exactly what she had seen in Maya from the very beginning. Not just talent, but the rare ability to make music come alive, to transform black dots on a page into pure emotion. As the piece continued, Maya felt like she was having a conversation with every person in the auditorium. The music was saying things she could never put into words about hope and sadness, about dreams and disappointment, about the beauty that can be found even in difficult moments. The middle section of the nocturne was more complex.
Cascade.
Runs and intricate harmonies. Maya's fingers danced across the keys with a grace that made the difficult passages look effortless. But it wasn't just her technique that impressed people. It was the way she made every note matter, the way she gave each phrase its own personality and meaning. In the back of the auditorium, some people had stood up to get a better view. Others were filming with their phones, wanting to capture this magical moment. The energy in the room was electric, but it was also deeply peaceful. Maya's music was creating a space where everyone could feel something real and beautiful together. Tyler sat with his fellow band members, remembering how stiff and anxious everyone had become under Mr. Harrison's teaching. Watching Maya play reminded him why he had fallen in love with music in the first place. It wasn't about being perfect or following every rule exactly. It was about sharing something meaningful with other people. As the nocturne moved toward its climax, Maya's playing became more intense without ever becoming harsh. She built the emotion layer by layer, like an artist adding colors to a painting. The melody soared over rich, complex harmonies, and Maya's face showed the deep concentration and joy of someone completely absorbed in their art. Mr. Harrison stood frozen in the wings, watching in disbelief. This was the same student he had dismissed as weak and forgettable just days earlier. But listening to her play now, he was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. He had been wrong. Terribly, completely wrong. Maya's interpretation of the nocturne was everything music should be. It had power, but it was the power of genuine emotion rather than empty volume. It had technical brilliance, but it was brilliance in service of beauty rather than showing off. Most importantly, it had heart. As Maya played the final section of the piece, the music began to settle back into the gentle, contemplative mood of the opening. But now those same quiet notes carried the weight of everything that had come before. They spoke of journeys taken, lessons learned, and peace found after struggle. The last note rang out into the silent auditorium, hanging in the air like a perfect moment suspended in time. Maya kept her hands on the keys for just a moment longer, not wanting to break the spell that the music had cast. Then, slowly, she lifted her hands and looked up at the audience. For a heartbeat, no one moved. The silence was so complete that Maya could hear her own breathing. Then someone started clapping. It might have been her grandmother, or Mrs. Rodriguez, or maybe just a stranger who had been moved by what they'd heard. But within seconds, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. It wasn't polite, restrained, clapping like Derek had received earlier. This was something else entirely. People were jumping to their feet, cheering, some wiping tears from their eyes. The applause was thunderous, rolling through the auditorium like waves crashing on a shore. Maya stood up from the piano bench, overwhelmed by the response. She had never heard applause like this before. It went on, showing no signs of stopping. People were calling out bravo and beautiful. Some were simply standing and clapping with huge smiles on their faces. Mrs. Rodriguez walked onto the stage and put her arm around Maya's shoulders. Together, they looked out at the sea of standing, cheering people. This, Mrs. Rodriguez whispered in Maya's ear, is what real music can do. Maya's parents were on their feet, clapping so hard their hands hurt. Her grandmother was crying and laughing at the same time. Around them, people were turning to each other with expressions of wonder, as if they had just witnessed something truly special. "That was incredible," said Mrs. Patterson to Maya's mother. "I've never heard anything like that from a high school student." "She made me cry," admitted Mr. Johnson, a tough construction worker who rarely showed emotion. "I don't know anything about classical music, but I know beautiful when I hear it." The applause continued for what felt like forever. Maya took several bows, each time seeming surprised that people were still cheering. She looked for her family in the audience and waved when she spotted them, which only made them cheer louder. Finally, the applause began to die down, but people remained standing. There was a feeling in the room that everyone had shared something important together, something they would remember for years to come. Principal Johnson returned to the stage, his own eyes moist with emotion. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the microphone, "I think we can all agree that was something very special." The audience erupted again, this time with laughter and renewed applause, as Maya finally left the stage. She was surrounded by classmates, teachers, and community members who wanted to congratulate her. People she didn't even know were stopping her to tell her how much her performance had meant to them. "You made me feel like I was floating," said an elderly woman with kind eyes. "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard," whispered a young girl who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Mrs. Rodriguez pulled Maya aside for a private moment. "I am so proud of you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Not just for how you played tonight, but for how you handled everything that happened these past few weeks. You showed grace under pressure, and then you showed everyone what real artistry looks like." Maya hugged her teacher tightly. "Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for coming tonight." "I wouldn't have missed it for the world," Mrs. Rodriguez replied. Across the auditorium, Mr. Harrison stood alone, watching the celebration surrounding Maya. He had spent his career believing that music was about discipline, precision, and following rules. But tonight, a 17-year-old girl had shown him something he had forgotten, that music's real power comes from its ability to touch the human heart. He thought about the harsh words he had spoken to Maya, about how he had dismissed her talent and made her doubt herself. He realized now that he hadn't just been wrong about her abilities, he had been wrong about what music itself was supposed to be. Later, as the auditorium began to empty, Maya sat with her family in their car, still trying to process what had happened. The whole evening felt like a dream. "I'm so proud of you, sweetheart," her father said, looking at her in the rearview mirror. "Not just for how you played, but for having the courage to get up there and do it." "I almost didn't," Maya admitted. "I was so scared. But you did it." "Anyway," her grandmother said, reaching over to squeeze her hand. "That's what courage is. Being scared, but doing the right thing anyway." As they drove home through the quiet streets, Maya looked out at the familiar neighborhood and felt like everything had changed. A few hours ago, she had thought her music dreams were over. Now she felt like they were just beginning. The next day at school, Maya's performance was all anyone could talk about. Students who had barely noticed her before were stopping her in the hallways to congratulate her.